So we just covered last week Genesis 18 and 19. In chapter 19, we saw how Sodom was destroyed, and we saw the craziness that took place with the family of Lot's daughters, and how they slept with him in order to have children and all that stuff. Uh, and we saw the descendants that came from Lot. And that's the context of where we are continuing with chapter 20. Genesis chapter 20. It says here in verse 1, and Abraham journeyed from there to the south and dwelt between Kadesh and Shur and stayed in Gerar. Gerar is in the Philistine country. So he's close to Egypt. He doesn't go into Egypt. He's staying in the Canaan territory. But the point is that Abraham goes into this area that is run by Philistines. And it says here, now Abraham said to Sarah his wife, she is my sister. And Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. That's what Abraham said in regards to Sarah. He didn't want Abimelech to think that that was his wife. So he says, that's my sister. So Gerar took Sarah to be part of his harem, to be part of his concubines. But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, indeed, you are a dead man. Whoa, imagine hearing that from God, that you are a dead man. Indeed, you are a dead man because of the woman whom you have taken, for she is a man's wife. Whoa. He didn't know that. Abraham didn't tell him that. Said it was his sister. Now, I know that some chapters ago, we covered a story so similar, and you might be thinking, wait a minute, are you preaching the same story again? It is not the same story. It's just that Abraham didn't learn from his mistake when he did the same exact thing in Egypt. He is doing the same thing again. He is doing it before he did it in Egypt, and now he's doing it in Gerar with Abimelech. And he says that, oh, this is my sister. By the way, Sarah the last time was, up there in age, but now definitely she's up there in age, because last time we found out her age was a couple of chapters ago, and the Bible says that she was 90 years old. 90 years old, or 89 years old, 91, around that area. And so she's in her early 90s. An early 90-year-old woman being told that, oh, I'm very nervous, my dear. I'm scared that the king of Gerar will like you so much, be so attracted to you, he'll kill me. A 90-year-old woman? Are you kidding me? Abraham, you really think that your 90-year-old wife is that good looking that the king is going to want to snatch her up? Well, apparently, it was. Now, Sarah was old. Remember, she was so old that she laughed at God. Abraham laughed so hard he fell on his face and laughed. So this is a real that she's old. It's not like, oh, this is biblical. No, she was old. And so, old couple goes to Gerar, but yet she is still good looking enough for Abimelech to want to take. But then he has a dream saying, you're a dead man. Verse 4, but Abimelech had not come near her. Oh, that's good. Now imagine if he actually did go into her. Imagine if he did sleep with her. Remember, the promise of God was that she would have a child sometime in the next year. Imagine if Abimelech slept with her, then they didn't have biological tests back then, DNA tests. They would be like, well, who impregnated her? Was it Abimelech or was it Abraham? Well, Abimelech had not come near her. And he said, Lord, will you slay a righteous nation also? Did he not say to me, she is my sister? And she even said herself, said, she is my brother. They both were in cahoots on this. They both were working together. In the integrity of my heart and innocence of my hands, I have done this. I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't know any better. And he didn't. I mean, yeah, it's not good to have multiple wives, but I mean, the in his mind, that wasn't wrong. Sarah was a single woman, for all he knew. And so now God is telling him that you are in danger here. You're in danger. You're a dead man. And now we continue on in verse 6. And God said to him in a dream. God said to him in a dream, yes, I know that you did this in the integrity of your heart, for I also have held you from sinning against me. Therefore, I did not let you touch her. God intervened before he could actually end up sleeping with Sarah. And so it was a preventative measure that God did here. And so before he could touch her, God stepped in. Now therefore, restore the man's wife, for he is a prophet. A prophet? Some prophet. Abraham is a prophet. Since when does a prophet lie and say, oh, she's not my wife, that's my sister? Why would you even give up your wife like that? What kind of romance is that? What kind of chivalry is that you protect your woman at all costs? Nope. For being a prophet, for being a supposed man of faith, he doesn't seem very faithful. He doesn't seem very trusting. Huh. Prophet. And he will pray for you, and you shall live. So interesting how Abimelech is getting the punishment. I mean, it should be Abraham really getting the punishment for selling out his woman like that. And he will pray for you, and you shall live. But if you do not restore her, know that you shall surely die, you and all who are yours. See, God gave him a warning. God warned him, you better get rid of that woman. You better send her back to her husband. I know that you didn't know, but now you know. So if you don't return, you will die. So Abimelech rose early in the morning, called all his servants, and told all these things in their hearing. And the men were very much afraid. And Abimelech called Abraham and said to him, what have you done to us? How have I offended you? What have I done to you? That you have brought on me and on my kingdom a great sin. You have done deeds to me that ought not to be done. Then Abimelech said to Abraham, what? What do you have in view that you have done this thing? In other words, what were you thinking? What kind of eyes do you have? What were you trying to pull here? What did you have in view? He didn't have anything because he wasn't seeing clearly. And Abraham said, because I thought, surely the fear of God is not in this place, and they will kill me on account of my wife. The fear of God is not in this place. You know, it's interesting. He judged the people thinking, oh, they don't believe in God, that the fear of God is not in this place, they're going to kill me. Shouldn't he have fear in God? But yet he had fear in the Philistines, the people of Gerar. It's interesting how he says they don't have the fear of God, but yet Abimelech, seem to trust God more and listen to God more than Abraham. The moment the God told Abimelech, don't mess with this woman, he didn't. Why didn't Abraham trust God? I mean, if God told him you would have a son, he wouldn't die before he can give birth to the son, so why would he be afraid? So Abraham says, because I thought surely the fear of God is not in this place, and they will kill me on account of my wife. But indeed, she is truly my sister. But indeed, she truly is my sister. She is the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother. And she became my wife. Oh, okay. You weren't lying because of a technicality. Oh, I see, Abraham. You weren't lying because that's your half sister. Okay, I get it. It's your half sister, and therefore you can say that's your sister, but you left out the most important detail, that's your wife, and let alone the fact that you basically gave her up to another man for him to sleep with her, which would have been adultery. So you set up your wife for adultery. Interesting. I guess they're Sarah and Abraham like doing that. You know, Sarah said to Abraham, "Why don't you go to Hagar and sleep with her?" Now Abraham asks his wife to go with Abimelech, and just so that he could spare his life. Why are they always trying to help out God? Why are they always trying to do this? Why don't they trust God? But yet, for some reason, oh, you guys don't fear God. Don't we look at people in the world like that? Don't we look at people from the world and be like, oh, they don't believe in God? But yet, it's interesting how many times the world will put us to shame. Like Abimelech put Abraham to shame. Verse 13. And it came to pass, when God caused me to wander from my father's house, that I said to her, this is your kindness that you should do for me in every place, wherever we go. Say of me, he is my brother. So they planned it out. You know, it's interesting. Lying is not something that God takes lightly. When couples join together in a lie, I mean, if you think about, remember in the book of Acts, how a couple came together to lie and they both died. God had mercy upon Abraham and Sarah. Then Abimelech took sheep, oxen, and male and female servants and gave them to Abraham and restored Sarah, his wife, to him. It's like deja vu. It's like the same story happens all over again. Abraham did not learn from his mistakes prior back in Egypt. Yet God had mercy upon him once again. God took care of him once again. God helped them. God even blessed them on top of everything. The mercy of God. Abimelech said, See, my land is before you. Dwell where it pleases you. Then to Sarah he said, Behold, I have given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. Indeed, this vindicates you before all who are with you and before everybody. Thus, she was rebuked. Oh, yeah, she was, everything was made right now. Look, I'm paying your brother. I like how he says your brother. Even though he knows now it's her husband, but it's like, behold, I have given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. Ah, boy, Abraham. I've paid him off. It should be all good now. So Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, his wife, and his female servants. Oh, apparently they got some sort of sickness or disease came upon them. And Abraham prays for them, and they're healed. Then they bore children, for the Lord had closed up all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. Wait a minute, how on earth could they know that they couldn't bear any children? Abimelech's family, Abimelech's concubines. Clearly, Sarah was not there for just one day, because it wouldn't take one day to find out if you're pregnant. Clearly, Sarah must have been in this palace for a couple of weeks, at least 2 weeks. And then they realized that they were sick, and then they realized that they couldn't bear children, and then Abimelech couldn't figure out what's going on, what's the problem here. And then next, he has a dream telling him, don't mess with this woman. And so, now, Abraham prays, and there is a healing that takes place. Once again, Abraham doesn't learn from his mistake, and he is still blessed despite it all. Let's go here to chapter 21 to continue the story of Abraham. Genesis chapter 21. It says, and the Lord visited as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah as he had spoken. Yeah, he spoke it. He said that it was going to happen, and it happened. The Lord spoke to Sarah and told Sarah this was going to happen around this time next year, and now that time happened. And it says, the Lord visited her. For Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age, at the set time which God had spoken to him. And Abraham called the name of his son who was born to him, whom Sarah bore to him, Isaac. Remember what Isaac means? Isaac means laughter. Why? Because Sarah laughed. So God said, oh yeah, you laugh? Well, now your son's going to be called Laughter. It was like his name was LOL, Laughter. Then Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded him. Now Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. And Sarah said, 100 years old here. God and Sarah said, God has made me laugh. Or a better translation, because that word laugh isn't a verb as it sounds like here in the English. It's actually a noun. In other words, God made a laugh, or God made a joke. God has made a joke, and all who hear will laugh with me. Remember, the word Isaac literally means laughter. He laughs, or she laughs, or they laugh. Well, all who hear will laugh with me. Zach with me. She also said, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children, for I have borne him a son in his old age. She's laughing about it, like, well, God, you had the final laugh here. You had the final laugh. You laughed, and so therefore you made the joke here, and Isaac is born. I got you. You're a funny God. And God does have a sense of humor. God, he knows. He knows the future. And when we think we know better than God, then that's a joke. That right there is a joke. That's laughter. And so now Isaac was born, and the joke was on them. So the child grew and was weaned. In other words, he was old enough that he didn't have to have breast milk anymore, and now he can eat solid food. And Abraham made a great feast on the same day that Isaac was weaned. This is a big deal. This is a big celebration. The child is not just born, but the child is healthy. The Bible, the child is able to live. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, whom she had born to Abraham, scoffing. The better translation is laughing. Matter of fact, this word, scoffing, is the same word that was used earlier when she said laugh. It's the same word, just the translators decided to use a more harsh word. And so what happened was that Sarah saw the son of Hagar, in other words, Ishmael. She saw Ishmael laughing. Well, she just said earlier that God made a joke and he's making us laugh. And now Ishmael is doing that same laughter that she talked about. And yeah, maybe he was a little jealous or something, or making fun. But the point is that he's a kid. Kids laugh. But she saw the son of Hagar laughing and she got upset. Where was her sense of humor now? Therefore, she said to Abraham, cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of this bondwoman shall not be heir with my son, namely with Isaac. Wait a minute. So Abraham gets a laugh in God's face, and God has mercy. Sarah gets a laugh within herself, and God has mercy. Ishmael, a little boy, a little teenager, laughs, and all of a sudden, that's it, get him out of here! Where was the mercy in Sarah? After all, he was just laughing. He was just Isaacing about Isaac. Not gonna be heir with my son. No way. And the matter was very displeasing in Abraham's sight because of his son. I mean, yeah, it was, yes, Isaac was the son from his wife, but Ishmael was still his son. It was still his flesh and blood. He still cared about him, and this was displeasing. Wait a minute, didn't we go through this already? Wasn't there another moment where Sarah got upset and then kicked out, and then Hagar ran away? Didn't this happen already? History repeats itself. And now Sarah, so upset that she sees Ishmael laughing at the feast. Poor Abraham. He's probably thinking to himself, "Oh, can't we just have a nice party? What's going on? Why can't you ladies just get along? Really, he's just a kid. What's the big deal?" But God, verse 12 says, "But God said to Abraham, do not let it be displeasing in your sight because of the lad or because of your bondwoman, the slave. Whatever Sarah has said to you, listen to her voice. For in Isaac your seed shall be called. Yet I will also make a nation of the son of the bondwoman, because he is your seed. I still your child. Therefore, I'll still bless him. I'll still make him a nation. But the nation that I was talking about is going to come from Isaac. Ishmael will just be a bonus nation because he's coming from you, because he's your seed. But as for the nation that I'm talking about, the one that will bless the world, this is going to come from Isaac." Oh boy. Poor Hagar. Poor Ishmael. Imagine for a moment, you were married to some guy, and he had a child from another relationship. He had another son, and then you get together with your husband, and you have your own child, And then your stepson, the son from another marriage, one day at a birthday party starts laughing at your son, at the biological son. And you look at your stepson and says, you know what? You're out of this house. All of us would agree that that is ridiculously messed up. I don't care what kind of jokes he was making or how he was laughing. If that's your stepson, you take care of your stepson. But to keep peace in the home, God said, let it happen. I'll take care of Ishmael. I mean, it wasn't God's desire. It was never God's desire for any of this to happen. It wasn't God's desire for Abraham and Sarah to take matters into their own hands and try to have a child outside of their bed. And it wasn't God's will. But although it wasn't God's will, God was still willing to work in that situation. Although it wasn't God's will for Sarah to be so mean and to kick out the son and her slave, God still was willing and was able to take care of them. Verse 14. So Abraham rose early in the morning and took bread and a skin of water, and putting it on her shoulder, he gave it and the boy to Hagar and sent her away. What? Really? Sent her away? Sent her away with what? Just bread and a skin of water? That's it? You're sending her off into the wilderness to journey through the wilderness, and you only gave her just bread and water? Shouldn't you give her more food than that? This is so wrong. This is so messed up. Yeah, God said, yeah, let him go, but because to keep the peace, but why such a little bit? Then she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba, the wilderness of the seven. And the waters in the skin, the water in the skin was used up. Well, yeah, if you're in the wilderness and you and another person, at least give them two. It's two people. Of course it's going to be used up eventually. No water left in the wilderness. And she placed the boy under one of the shrubs. And she went and sat down across from him at a distance, about a bow shot. For she said to herself, let me not see the death of the boy. So she sat opposite him and lifted her voice and wept. She couldn't stand watching her son die. What mother could? Abandoned. Rejected. Without resources. She knew her son was going to die. I can't watch. And God heard the voice of the lad. Oh, just like that, just like the last time, how God heard them, how God took care of them. God heard the voice of the lad. And the angel of God called to Hagar out of heaven and said, what ails you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the lad, where he is. God heard the voice. God heard. I love that. I love the fact that it mentions how God can hear the voice of Ishmael. I mean, as you remember, that's what Ishmael means. God hears. I hear the voice of the lad where he is. Arise, lift up the lad, and hold him with your hand, for I will make him a great nation. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. And she went and filled the skin with water and gave the lad a drink. I don't know if that water was already there. She didn't notice it. I don't know if maybe God miraculously brought about water. But the point is that God opened her eyes and she saw there was a well of water. And she was able to give drink to the lad. Gave the lad a drink. It reminds me of that story where Jesus is with the woman at the well and he says, I have water that will never run dry. You see the skin of water that Abraham gave her, that little bottle of water and some animal skin, that dried up. But the water of God does not dry up. That water will take care of his people. Yeah, Ishmael was his person. Yeah, he's willing to take care of him. God hears. So God was with the lad. I love that. God was with the lad. And he grew and dwelt in the wilderness and became an archer. He dwelt in the wilderness of Paran. And his mother took a wife for him from the land of Egypt. Well, that's where she was from, so it makes sense that she would find an Egyptian wife for him. You know, here you have a story of how Hagar and her son were just put out, rejected, but yet God heard. God heard the cries. He heard the prayer of a rejected boy. And he provided water for them when his family did not. When his family did not provide anything for him, God provided. You see, when we don't have a family, when we don't have a dad, when we don't have a mom, God is that parent that is there for us. His dad rejected him, but his heavenly Father did not. He was able to be there for Ishmael. I want to take a look because this is actually a story that's brought up in the New Testament. I don't want to go there. In Galatians chapter 4. In Galatians chapter 4, it talks about this whole concept of Hagar. Look at what it says here in Galatians chapter 4, verse 21. Tell me, you who desire to be under the law, do you not hear the law? For it is written that Abraham had two sons. The one by a bondwoman, a slave, and the other by a free woman. But he who was of the bondwoman was born according to the flesh. Well, yeah, that was human manipulation they tried. And here the free woman through promise. Because as you remember, when Sarah got pregnant, it didn't say Abraham went in unto her, which he did, but it said the Lord came unto her. The Lord visited her, and she conceived. See, God had to show up. The free woman's birth came through a promise. God spoke, and life became. Which things are symbolic. God, the Bible is saying that these two women were symbolic. Although this is a true story, it was symbolic of something. Which things are symbolic. For these are two covenants. two promises, two covenants, right? Kind of like how the Bible likes talking about two covenants, right? The Old Covenant, the New Covenant, or the Old Testament, the New Testament. The one from Mount Sinai, which gives birth to bondage, which is Hagar. For this Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia and corresponds to Jerusalem, which now is and is in bondage with her children. But the Jerusalem above is free, which is the mother of us all. For it is written, rejoice, O barren, you who do not bear. Break forth and shout, you who are not in labor. For the desolate has many more children than she who has a husband. God gives a promise. God gives a promise to provide this child. But he makes a comparison that Isaac and Ishmael are like the old and new covenant. Oh, that old covenant was like a Hagar. That covenant that came from Mount Sinai. What came from Mount Sinai? What came from Mount Sinai? Let's back up here. The law. The Ten Commandments came from Mount Sinai. It's saying that that is like the bondage of law. That is like Ishmael. In other words, if you try to save yourself through the law, it's like trying to provide the promise by having an Ishmael. Why don't you try some human manipulation, go sleep with that slave and see what happens? But Isaac, the one that you laughed at, the one that you think was impossible, oh, it was possible. God can make you free. Rejoice, O barren, you who do not bear. Break forth and shout. Give birth, in other words, you who are not in labor, for the desolate has many more children, she who has a husband. Now we, brethren, as Isaac was, are children of promise. Hey, we're in luck. As Isaac, we're children of promise. But as he who was born according to the flesh, then persecuted him, who was born according to the Spirit. Even so it is now. Nevertheless, what does the scripture say? Cast out the bondwoman and her son. For the son of the bondwoman shall not be heir with the son of the free woman. So then, brethren, we are not children of the bondwoman, but of the free. What an interesting analogy that is here. God cast out the woman. Cast out that bondwoman and her son. If you're not an Isaac, but you're an Ishmael, you're cast out. Get rid of them. Out of here. We cannot be children of the slave. But instead we have to be children of the free woman. But look what it says here in the next chapter. Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty by which God has made us free. What? And do not be entangled again with the yoke of bondage. Wait a minute now. Wait a minute. It says Christ has made us free. We're no longer in bondage. What? You see, there were two sons. One who was a slave and one who was free, an Ishmael and an Isaac. However, all of us were born, but we all have to be born again. You see, none of us are free until we're born again. All of us are slaves under the bondage of sin and under the law. But God can make us free. Just like how in our story in Genesis chapter 21, we read about a woman who was cast out. Get rid of her! And yeah, that's us. Get rid of that slave. But you know, that St. Paul wrote Galatians, mentions in Romans how we are a slave of sin, but we get rid of the body of sin. Romans chapter 6. You see, yes, we get rid of the slave. Because if we can get rid of the slave, yeah, you're gone. However, God can take us away from the bondage. He can make us free. You see, Abraham was not willing. Abraham and Sarah were not willing to adopt Ishmael. They wanted to get rid of him. Sarah did. But you see, with God, yes, the slave will be cast out unless the slave chooses to be adopted. If the slave, you and I, can choose to be adopted, we can be set free. As long as we can call out to God, God will hear us and He will bless us. Arise, lift up the lad and hold him with your hand, for I will make him a great nation. I will bless him. I will take care of him. Abraham did not take care of Ishmael. He threw him out. But with God, He won't cast you out. But you have to be adopted. See, if you're not adopted, you will be treated as a slave. But if you're adopted, you'll be treated as a son. But the story doesn't end there, because we start off talking about Abimelech, remember? And it came to pass at that time that Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his army, spoke to Abraham, because Abraham was still living around that area. You know, it says he spoke to Abraham, saying, "God is with you in all that you do. Now therefore swear to me by God that you will not deal falsely with me, with my offspring, or with my posterity, but according to the kindness that I have done to you, you will do to me and to the land in which you have dwelt." In other words, Abimelech, he wanted to make some sort of treaty with Abraham. Let's be good to one another. And Abraham said, "I swear." Then Abraham rebuked Abimelech because of a well of water which Abimelech's servant had seized. Well, wow, that treaty didn't seem to last too long. I mean, they were supposed to be good to one another. All of a sudden now Abraham's upset. He rebukes Abimelech because of the well of water which Abimelech's servants had seized. And Abimelech said, "I do not know who has done this thing. You did not tell me, nor had I heard of it until today." Well, Abraham took the opportunity, now that they made a treaty, to talk about his grievance. Well, I didn't know. Abraham is a very bad communicator. He didn't tell Abimelech that that Sarah was his wife. He didn't tell Abimelech that some people were messing with his wells. I didn't hear it until today. So Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave it to Abimelech. And the two of them made a covenant. And Abraham set 7 ewe lambs of the flock by themselves. Abraham set those 7 ewe lambs, the flock by themselves. Then Abimelech asked Abraham, "What is the meaning of these 7 ewe lambs, which you have set by themselves? What is this? What are you doing?" And he said, "You will take these 7 ewe lambs from my hand, that they may be a witness that I have dug this well." Therefore, he called the place Beersheba. Remember we talked about Beersheba? 7. The 7. Like 7 wells. Because the two of them swore an oath there. They made a covenant there. It's kind of a random, it seems like a random story that would appear. But look here. Earlier, Hagar was wandering in the wilderness of Beersheba. And God provided water. And now, water is provided again. The 7. The 7. Oh, that good number, that perfect number, that number of completion. See, God is willing and able to supply all of our needs. He provided in Beersheba for Hagar. Now he's providing water for Abraham as well in Beersheba, the 7. Thus he made. So it says here, verse 30, and he said, "You will take the 7 ewe lambs. You will take the 7 ewe lambs from my hand, and these shall may be my witness that I have dug this well." Therefore, he called the place Beersheba, because 2 of them swore an oath there. They made a covenant. They made a covenant. A Philistine and somebody who will be later the father of the Jews made a covenant. You know, this is so symbolic. Because from the very chapter where Isaac, the father of the nations of Israel, was born, was a covenant. See, the covenant wasn't meant to be, oh, the blessings of God remains just with this family. From the very first chapter that Isaac is born, it mentions the covenant that is made between the people of God and a Philistine. The Philistine, or later on we read about the Philistines and about how David had a hard time with the Philistines, Saul and them, a hard time with the Philistines. But here with the Philistines, there was a covenant made. If only they kept that covenant, if only they kept trying to reach out. Hagar came from Egypt, went back to Egypt to get a wife for her son. If only they kept the message. If only they kept the message. But they never shared the message again with the Philistines. They never shared the message with the Egyptians. This message stayed to themselves, but yet here at the beginning, that's Genesis, the beginnings. Here at the beginning, God was trying to set a precedent, which unfortunately didn't follow. That he cares about the reject, half Egyptian. He cared about the Egyptian Hagar. He cared about the Philistine. In fact, it seems like The Philistine, Abimelech, and Ishmael were the ones who had the most faith so far in this chapter. God tried to swear an oath, try to make a covenant. Thus, they made a covenant at Beersheba. So Abimelech rose with Phishgal, the commander of his army, and they returned to the land of the Philistines. And Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba, near to where Gerar is. And Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba, and there called on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. What a nice thing to plant when you're starting something. They started a covenant, let's plant a tree, let it grow. But you just can't plant something. You gotta water it. You gotta tend to it. You gotta take care of it. The children of Israel did not do that. But it was planted. Planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba and called on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. And Abraham stayed in the land of the Philistines many days. Isn't that interesting? He was in the land of the Philistines these many days. Interesting beginnings. Abraham was not perfect, but yet he was still called a prophet. Abraham and Sarah were not the best. Abraham and Sarah didn't seem like they had a lot of faith, but you know, that's the good thing. God never said we needed a lot of faith. He said we just needed a little bit of faith. And then great things can happen. When they trusted God a little bit, a child was born. Ishmael trusted in God and water was provided. Abimelech trusted in God and his family was healed, and his family started to have children once again. And they were able to make a treaty, make a covenant, a promise. See, God wanted to adopt them in. It doesn't matter what nationality you're in and what family you grew up in. It doesn't matter if you even if you did not have a family or a family that rejected you. God wants to adopt you into his family. And he wants to make a covenant with you.